Hello and welcome to another rhythm video. So before I start on today's topic, I want to touch on the question of how do I know whether I just need to write 1, 2, 3, 4, or whether I need to write 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. And the answer to that question is you have to look at the line of music that you are working on, the whole line, and you have to figure out what the smallest note is that's in that line. So if the smallest note is only a quarter note, then you can just write the main beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. If the smallest note is an eighth note, you have to write 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and if the smallest note is a 16th note, then you have to write 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Even if there's not very many 16th notes in that particular video, you still have to do that. Now, today we're going to talk about the notion of the tie in rhythm. And before we do that, I have some music on the board behind me, and we're going to quickly write in the beats for that music, because then we're going to see how ties will change things. So, if you take a look, this is very simple music. I only have half notes, quarter notes, and a quarter rest. So that means I can get away with just writing my main beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, which I'll do very quickly and which you can all do by now. And as you can see, the notes that are, or the beats that are small and superscripted are just the continuations of the half notes, and in this case, that quarter rest that exists. Everything else is large because I'm clapping on everything else. So if I was going to count and clap this, obviously it would just sound like this. Ready, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty simple, right? So, the notion of a tie. First of all, what is a tie? A tie is a thing that looks like this. It's just a swoopy line that connects the note heads of a couple of notes together. That's all it is. And what it does is a tie is basically adding the two notes into one. It's saying, hey, look, I know these are drawn as two separate things, but I'm tying them together, I'm making it into one thing, and now it only counts as one note. So the change that we make is that if this quarter note is tied to that half note, then we're not clapping on this quarter note anymore, because now it's just part of this note. So beat 3 is now superscripted. Okay, and I could throw a couple of other ties into the music here. Maybe like that. So I say, okay, well, right here, this is no longer a clap because it's a continuation of the note that came before it. And this is no longer a clap because it's a continuation of the note that came before that. So now we're going to count and clap this with my ties here so that we get an idea of how this works. So here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty straightforward, right? Let's look at it with eighth notes. All right, so here we have a couple of bars of music that involves eighth notes. So now we have to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And if we take a look here, we're starting with an eighth rest, so that'll be, of course, a superscripted 1. That puts this on and. Normally, our quarter note here would be a large 2, but it's not because it's tied together up here at the top. So this is 2 and it's all superscripted. Now we have a quarter note that's not tied to everything, so that's going to get big 3. And then we have a quarter rest here, which is, of course, superscripted. Over here, we have eighth note on 1, another one on the and of 1, but look at this. These two are tied together, so the one that's on the and of 1 and the one that's on 2 are part of the same note, so we'll put the 2 up high. We have an eighth rest. Then we have a quarter note tied to an eighth note. Quarter note starts on 3, and it gets 3 and. The eighth note is on 4, but it's a small 4 because they're tied. And then we have an eighth rest. Counting and clapping the example, here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Remember that when you're counting and clapping on rests, you actually pull your hands apart intentionally. All right, so let's go ahead and do an example involving dots. So we've previously learned about dots in one of the previous lessons here, and now it's time to put dots and ties together in the same bar just to make it interesting. Why not? And voila, there's some music for us to work with. So here we go from the beginning. First of all, what is the deal with this? If you're a new music reader, you might not be used to seeing that. What that is a dotted eighth note and a 16th note that have been barred together. They're separate notes. Okay, they've been barred together so that you could see the beat more easily. So that's clearly a beat, that's clearly a beat, that's clearly a beat, and that's a beat. All right, so that's why they bar things together, is to help you show the beats. But all that being the case, we start with the dotted eighth note, and we're counting in 16ths, 1 E and a 2 E and etc. So how many 16th notes is a dotted eighth? Previously we learned that it's 3, so 1 E and. So here we go, 1 E and, there it is. That puts this 16th note on a. And then normally we would make this a big 2 because it's on beat 2, but guess what? It's tied. So it's not. It's part of this last note that happened. So this eighth note here is 2E, and they're both small. Now we've got one that is the beginning of a new note. This is and a. Here's a 16th, actually here's 4 16th notes in a row. Normally they would each be clapped, 3 E and a, but the first one is tied, and therefore the first one is small. 3, and then E and a. And then we have a good old quarter note here on beat 4, and it gets E and a as well. Let's go ahead and count and clap this one. Ready and go. E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and One more time, just because that's a harder one. Here we go. Ready and go. E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and So ties add notes together. They tie the notes together. So literally the first one is the clap. The second note, that anytime that you encounter a tie, the second note is part of the first one. It's not a clapped note anymore. And so you reflect that when you're writing in your rhythms, and then later when you're performing for us and showing us that you understand these and can perform them. Yeah, tied notes, no clapping. All right? Hope you're enjoying this stuff. Oh, and by the way, one of the kids, Johnny, what was the question you were asking me? Huh? Oh, yeah. How come I have to keep doing this? You make us do this like every day. Like, why are you doing this to us? Why can we just stop now? Like, we've done it for a few days. It's enough. Okay, guys, and the answer to that is that when you were in first grade and you were learning to read, and they had you, everyone goes in groups and you take turns reading out of a book, or however you did it, right? They didn't have you just practice reading for 2 or 3 days and say, oh, it's good enough. He can read, Bob had a cat. Bob liked his cat. And then they were like, it's good enough. You can read, you're fluent. No, you spent years every day in school learning to read, and now you can read pretty well, I hope. And it's got to be the same with music until you get to the point where this stuff is easy. And guys, this is like the day 8 lesson or whatever, day 7, whatever lesson this is. Until you get to the point where this stuff is easy, then you're not there yet. I'm going to be throwing stuff at you all semester. We're only just beginning on this stuff. So keep practicing, and keep your head in the game. You want to get to where you are not a parrot, that you are a fluent reader. All right? I'll talk to you guys all later. Bye. Do your assignment.